everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is exciting because we have a couple of other VR developers with us. We have Thomas Van Bouwel, who is the creator of Cubism. And then we also have Alexis Moroz, who was the game director for A Fisherman's Tale. So I'll kick this off, and then maybe just when you guys are getting ready to putt, maybe you can just give us a little intro, a little backstory, just sort of tell us how you kind of found your way into playing Walkabout at this moment. So I'll go first. I'm Lucas Martell. By the way, I'm not first because I'm not the game master. Thomas, you get to go first.
Oh yeah, it's me. Wait, okay, yeah. So should I just give my intro now then? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into VR development and everything. Yeah, absolutely. So hey, my name's Thomas. I made a puzzle game on Quest called Cubism. I actually have a background in architecture originally, but I sort of found my way into VR development at first as a hobby. Like, it was a fun way to sort of learn to develop VR and to make things in VR. And Cubism was a sort of hobby project at first that kind of spiraled out of control. And yeah, it launched on Quest, and I'm now sort of doing it full time. So that's the short version of it. But
that's awesome. I love Cubism. The sort of like the simple mechanic of the puzzle design, but that you can add more, and especially just like with the VR, it's one of those things that unless you've tried it, the actual putting them together, it's so satisfying when you get everything to just click right into place. So yeah.
Oh, thanks.
I won't do a long intro to myself, but yeah, I'm the creator of Walkabout. My story is actually very similar to yours. I was pretty much a solo dev. The whole mini golf thing was just sort of a side project. My background is more in animation, and then I got now we've got a small team working on this. So, and you'd think that I would be better at it, but I'm more focused on talking than I am on putting. So I'm gonna hang my head in shame.
So I will totally profit from your experiences and know where not to shoot, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm, as you said, I'm Alexis Moroz. I was a game director on Fisherman's Tale. I've actually been working in the video game industry for like the last 15 years. I had the huge luck of working with many companies, including exactly same error. Cool.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah, Ubisoft and Quantic Dream or Gameloft, like big companies, but also lots of indies. Then I went to do game design freelance. And finally, I had the chance to join InnerspaceVR as they worked on a few experiences, and then I brought my game design expertise, if I dare say. Then we created a Fisherman's Tale. We're actually working on finishing to work on a new project that I can't talk much about, sadly enough. And beyond that, I also created another company quite recently, about a year ago, about impact game. So that's called World Game. It's about trying to do games that have a positive impact. So yeah,
awesome.
That's it. That's the whole resume. The whole resume.
Yeah, Fisherman's Tale was probably one of the first, because we had actually met in real life. We had met at IndieCade in Paris in 2018, I think. So I think the game was done at that point, or were you showing off an in-progress version of Fisherman's Tale at that point?
No, as you said, it was already released on Steam and PSVR, I think. So it was among the first batch of games.
So Thomas, just because I know your game probably from a visual standpoint is probably, it's very simple. It's very well executed, but you're not trying to push the system. You're not trying to render huge environments or anything like that.
Minimal, yeah.
Do you really run into many issues at all with trying to run on Quest, or do you have to do a whole lot to optimize?
No, not in the traditional sense, for sure. Because the game is mostly cubes and cubic shapes, right? It's definitely not like I'm not running into any polygon limits or anything like this. But dang. Maybe no. Okay. But I think optimization, it still had to happen when I was going through the QA process before launching on Quest. But it was more about object management. There's a lot of small components that get reused to sort of draw the puzzles, and doing that sort of efficiently. it was that sort of stuff. But yeah, I didn't have to do the traditional, optimizing shaders or optimizing geometry and stuff like this for a game like this to get it running.
Totally.
And there's definitely performance overhead that I was able to use to, support things like 120 hertz and hand tracking and stuff like this, because it's such a simple game.
You can turn on all of the bells and whistles, which I'm not jealous at all of that, being able to do that.
Do I remember correctly, you designed the first courses on Gravity Sketch? Or were you using some sort
Gravity
of
Sketch
VR modeling tool?
Gravity Sketch is newer, but I guess maybe not the first couple, but we use Gravity Sketch a lot. Typically, we'll start off with just a really rough sketch. Like, we'll literally just be using like the pen tool to just like figure out like how you're going to flow through the course, because it is so quick. Like, literally, like where you'd normally do a top-down sketch, we'll do that, but in VR, which really allows you to it allows you to just kind of figure out like where things are going to flow. But literally, you can do it in like 10 minutes. And you get verticality, and you can kind of see sight lines. You can be like, oh, we want to move this cliff over there because then it'll block the view of this. So we're figuring out sight lines. Scale is also really huge. The fact that we can go to proper scale and be like, oh, that doorway needs to be twice as big, or feels like it's wrong. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff. But just the flow, and it really helps with anything organic. So we also then use it to like, all of this stuff was pretty much placed in Gravity Sketch, because you can just grab the gumdrops and just plop, stamp, 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 and it would take hours to do that in Blender. But the fact that you're in VR and you have your camera and the ability to scale, rotate, and translate all on a single hand is just sort of like, it's so hard to go back to traditional modeling.
It may turn into a Gravity Sketch advertisement, but I have to say that at Innerspace also we use it a lot for teamwork. It's totally great to be able to be a bunch of people just looking at the same models. And Balthazar Oxietre, who is a creative director at InnerspaceVR, is especially good in Gravity Sketch. He will sketch up things very fast and very beautifully and accurately. Just a few gestures. It's quite impressive tool. I was quite impressed.
Oh yeah. And the collaboration feature. We have found that we can't really, like, we could not load this whole model into the collaboration version of it. It's just too heavy for it. But the initial sketches we are able to go around and actually do in person, which is so.
Come on!
Ooh.
Close enough.
Yeah. But I have no problem sort of if this turns into a Gravity Sketch advertisement, because in terms of like things that have sort of changed how I think and how I do things, that's top of the list. So. In fact, just today I was literally in there, just like I call it my Bob Ross place, where I just get to I'm just dropping down happy little trees and a lot of rocks. I tend to be the person who tends to get really obsessive about my rocks. So
happy little mistakes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's fine. Happy little mistakes. Put another rock over it and hide the sins. Yeah.
Okay.
I actually wanted to jump back a little bit and ask you, Alexis, just because you were kind of the classic case where that you had a game that was out for a couple of years, and then the Quest came along. How was that porting process? Or you were the director. Were you even very involved in the? Were you even very involved in the Quest port?
Not so much in the optimization process, but obviously I heard about it, and the technical team. And artists also did a really impressive job scaling down what had to be scaled down, and trying to retain as much of the charm of the PC game. And I think me myself, I mostly play it on the Quest now, because I love the Quest. Much easier to use, and I forget the differences with the original version. From time to time, I see, there was this special effect or this little detail, but mostly I feel it's pretty much identical, and we were lucky because not every games were able to be ported at all or good enough. Roboricall suffered a lot, and quite a few other games suffered a lot in port to the Quest being ported. Okay.
Well, it also makes. I mean, Fisherman's Tale is also so much about, like, you were in a relatively small space. It's not like it was a massive, like it wasn't
open world.
Graphically, it was gorgeous. Yeah, it wasn't a big open world thing that you were just happened to sort of like sell scale. It was, I mean, you were selling scale, but in a more literal way, which that was also one of my, I mean, in terms of like just puzzle games, like the thing that I loved about that, I have this affinity for, I love puzzle games that sort of take a mechanic and build a game around it. Like Portal to me is the perfect one. It's sort of like, oh, here's one cool thing, but then finding 50 different things to do with it. So I'm actually kind of curious how that mechanic, and for folks who haven't played Fisherman's Tale, watch the trailer because it's kind of hard to explain, but you're essentially playing in like I don't know if a mirror version of, so you can see yourself in the dollhouse and you can hand stuff down to yourself. You can interact with a giant version of yourself, which is very mind trippy, but only works in VR, and it's such a cool mechanic. I'm just kind of curious how you guys came up with that, or what was the process for building that game around that mechanic.
You talked about Portal, and obviously Portal and this design school of thought of taking bottom-up gameplay. You take one gameplay and you build upon it as much as you can. Is something we were really interested about. I have a few big game designer references that I love, like Jonathan Blow from Braid on The Witness.
Oh, absolutely.
Games like that I feel are really masters to this process of taking one conceptual gameplay ideas and then actually like creating a language around it. It's almost like you're writing new words that comes from previous words, and that's the hard part. And I feel we try to do it, but obviously compared to those references, it's trying to do as best as we could. It's about teaching this language to the player. This is your first word, and then what can you do with that now that you are fluent with this word? And that's really something I always loved. When an idea
the great thing
sorry.
Oh no! I was going to say, I think the other thing that is so great about that is that it's easy to say, like, oh yeah, pick a mechanic and build a game around it. The reality is, though, if like you need to find a mechanic that is both fun, and that is so much fun to sort of like just that scale and the interacting with yourself, that it just breaks your brain in a fun way, but then also being able to use it. You also need a mechanic that is flexible enough that allows you to build a game around it, that you're not sort of repeating the same thing, that every puzzle becomes a new thing. So that's just such a it's such an
figure
awesome.
That out early enough? Well, like if you have this mechanic, how do you explore its? There's many things we can do with it and build a game around it. Yeah.
I guess you're familiar with game jams and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I'm a big believer in prototyping and brainstorming and trying to throw at first as many things as you can at the wall and see what sticks. So that was obviously the early process was just about discussing and thinking about whatever could be done with this recursion mechanic. And then, let's spiral. And then prototyping some of those ideas. And we actually didn't use all of the ideas we were thinking about because some of them weren't as fun as they could have been. Or others were a bit weak, sorry. Others were hard to, explain to the player good enough. And we didn't want, as you say, Lucas, to repeat too much stuff and to say, okay, you have done this once and now you do it again and again and again. So that actually explains the relative short nature of the game. We explore the idea, we tell the story we want to tell, and then that's it. Thanks for playing.
But I also like that, but I've got 2 young kids and just managing this game and everything. I would much rather have a really tight 2-hour experience, which I'm trying to think of how, because it's been It's been years since I played Fisherman's Tale, but I still remember it. In fact, I've gotten copies for a couple of the rest of our team just to show them. So I'm trying to remember exactly how long it took me the first time, but what's the average play time on Fisherman's Tale? Is it a couple hours, probably?
As you said, yeah, exactly, a couple hours. Exactly as you said, and that's an average time. And there's quite a bit of variance because puzzle games, and you know probably what I'm talking about, Thomas, are difficult balancing act, and we actually have a hint system that the player can activate or not if they feel they don't want to be helped during the game, or they will need to be helped a bit. Oh, okay. Yeah. And so for the really better player, I feel it could be first play be done in a bit more than 1 hour, I guess. Someone who wouldn't enjoy so much of the environment and run through, but I'm talking maybe smaller cases, but there are some of them, and obviously it can go up to 3 to 4 hours to people that take their time or are blocked, not blocked, but doesn't know how to solve this or that puzzle.
Yeah, but again, I feel like that's perfect, and like I said, I would much rather have that tight couple-hour experience than sort of like something that repeats itself or just it starts to get grindy. I'd much rather have like the tight feature version than the long thing. So
as you said, Portal was a reference, and the very first Portal, I finished it like in 3 hours, about 3 hours back in the day. It was quite a short game with one big idea.
That's right, yeah.
And variation on this idea. Portal 2 then went much further and added other mechanism and was about 8 to 9 hours, I feel, to complete. But the very first one, it was enough. It was good.
Yeah, I think that is the thing, because whenever I think of Portal, I always lump the two of them together and think like, that wasn't 2 hours, but you're right, that the first one likely it was pretty short. It was only the second one when they, when they really sort of like added a lot more mechanics, and it was still awesome. But I will say, I felt like Portal 1 was the sort of like the quintessential idea where they didn't necessarily introduce other sort of like add-on mechanics as much.
Right.
Ooh, nice. Very nice. I have to say the other thing that I love about Cubism is this is going to seem, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this, because it's simple, but the level of polish that goes into it, a big part to me of the satisfaction is like, it's the little moments, it's like all the subtle little haptic things, all of the just polish, and you think like, okay, that's just like little things, but it's not about one of those. It's like all of the 100 little polish things that just make it feel, I mean this in the best possible way, it almost feels like an iOS game a little bit. Like in the sort of like the Apple like Game of the Year sort of thing, like Monument Valley, or just sort of like simple, but sort of like just has this extreme level of polish, and just like, I don't know, it's just like every time those things snap into place, like I get a little dopamine rush, which
nice.
I'm kind of curious, because how much did that break down in terms of like time that you were spending developing the base game versus all of the polish that went into that one, especially as a solo dev?
Right. So a lot of that, a little bit came by accident, I think, because sort of the game by design was very minimal, because I had a full-time job, which I really enjoyed. I was working for
Whoa,
that's a great shot.
Thank you. That was pure luck.
I don't believe it. That's pure skill. Oh wait.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. See. No, okay. It was. I had a full-time job, which I really enjoyed, working for a VR startup. And so it was sort of a hobby project on the weekend, and it was definitely designed to be a thing that could be done on the weekends, just as a spare time thing, right? And that was sort of the starting point for me too. I was a very big fan of just minimal games on mobile, on iOS really, like Mini Metro or Monument Valley or things like this. It just felt like, this is actually the perfect scope if you want to work on a VR game, but you don't have a lot of time. So, and I didn't really see that many minimal games in VR, and that was sort of the starting point. Like, what's a simple game mechanic that makes the most of VR, but that's very manageable as a one-man team. That's where it started. But then having that and sort of developing it over a long time means you can just sort of focus on the small things, right? Like if you just have one simple game mechanic, you can really focus on making it accessible and making it very user-friendly. And yeah, basically, it's a game that shouldn't have taken me 3 years to get to launch, but it did because I took a lot of breaks. Sometimes I didn't have time to work on it, but it just means you get to test it with a lot of people.
This is very impressive to me, to be perfectly honest, because I'm more one of those early development guys who love to play. We spoke about Game Jam with the ideas, the prototypes, and see what works. But having the patience and the fortitude to actually polish a game to perfection and make sure that everything clicks and everything has the most juice and game feel it can. That takes really patience and rigor, and that's very impressive to be able to do that, especially on your own. I mean, when you said you were on your own, like, I mean, you didn't have like emulation people to challenge you and cheer you up, and that's also very hard from experience. I mean.
I was working with so before I started on Cubism, I was working on a project called Panoptic, which is a game that also came out on Steam. It's this asymmetrical game where one player plays in VR, and it's sort of a hide-and-seek game where the PC player needs to sort of hide in a crowd of NPCs. And we were doing this in a group of friends, and so I helped out with the early production of this game. But at the time I was living in the States, and they were all living in Belgium, where I'm from. And it just became really hard to sort of combine this with a full-time job. That's the difficulty if you're doing it as a hobby sometimes, is to just be able to contribute meaningfully to something like this. So it really was a choice at first, but then it sort of worked out in terms of being able to polish it, having such a simple game. So and definitely it was a solo project, but I always seek out sort of the game dev communities in the places that I live, and there's just, you can find indie devs everywhere, right? It's amazing. So it's a bit more difficult now with COVID, I guess, to meet all these people, but you can always sort of find a place to show games and test it and get feedback and stuff. So that was definitely the case throughout development, at least early on before the whole lockdown situation. Right?
But also the whole solo dev situation, you could tell. So I'm guessing you had probably released at least one or other solo project before then. Was that the one that you were just talking about that was on Steam?
So Panoptic, we had a demo of that out, and then I left the team because I didn't feel I could contribute meaningfully to it. Working remotely at that time, so they sort of continued that project, and now it's out as a full game. And then Cubism was sort of my first personal sort of commercial release.
Oh wow, that was your very first one. Okay, wow, yeah. Because I know I had actually, because I had done 57 North and Laser Mazer, which were both very small mobile games, but having done that and actually gone through the process of releasing those, especially for solo devs, what we were just talking about in terms of that being able to polish, but when you say that it took 2 or 3 years, even with some breaks in there, that doesn't surprise me at all, because the reality is the making of the core base game goes pretty quick, but it is all of the polish and all of the getting ready to launch, and just especially when you're shipping on VR and you have to deal with a lot more certification and going through all that, it takes a lot of time.
But short games are definitely so much more palatable. I think it's been a few years since I've played a big AAA game that takes 20 hours to beat. I'm also not that interested in that anymore. It's just so much nicer to be able to start something new. You can finish it in an evening or two.
Yeah. Well, and I think you reach a certain point in your life, career, whatever you want to call it, that you it's also when I finally get a little break, the last thing I want to do is sit in front of a screen or put the headset back on, because as much fun as it is doing it, I'm in the headset 4 hours a day and in meetings and on the screen the rest of the time. So it's so tough to sort of balance the work and passion.
So I have to reenact Augustus Gloop from
Oh yes.
the chocolate factory. Come on, come on,
Nice. Do you have a tube somewhere you can go up? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
do
you should
actually.
find something. Okay,
Well, really?
I'll wait for this one.
nice.
But
The Oompa Loompas will come
from
out
close up.
and sing you your song.
Yeah, exactly. Waiting for them.
Right.
That's so cool.
Have you guys messed around much with multiplayer, or had to deal with that a whole lot, or are you guys mostly working in single player spaces?
So I. Oh yeah, go ahead first.
No, you go. My
Yeah.
turn to play.
In a startup where I used to work before, as I mentioned, it was a VR startup called Resolve, and they would make software for architects and engineers. So, with
Okay.
my background, it was ideal. But it was basically multiplayer software, because it was sort of a... Whoa!
Nice.
No way!
It's like,
That's amazing.
Beautifully done.
well,
Wow.
no luck at all. No luck at all.
Pure skill.
I am dumbstruck.
Pure skill, absolutely. Calculated.
I'm gonna see the replay of this for sure. Oh no.
Oh, but Thomas, you were
but yeah,
saying
so,
that
was
so that you
multiplayer,
did it
but,
with the like.
Resolve it was
Or, yeah,
called. So it was
collaboration
sort of a
stuff
design
from
review
VR.
tool for engineers and construction professionals to look at buildings before they're built. But
Okay.
I luckily was working with another engineer who did most of the multiplayer implementation, so I didn't have to interface with it too much. But yeah, I've done only the basic tutorials, sort
Yeah.
of messing around and prototyping, but haven't gone too deep yet. So
Yeah, I mean, I will say that one of the other things, and this is maybe where I was kind of angling with that question, is just sort of like, I wonder, we're very lucky that fundamentally adding multiplayer didn't really change the design of this game at all. There's some technical stuff and a couple of things you need to allow for, but change the core gameplay. So, but yeah, I could see sort of like if you were doing a puzzle game, especially multiplayer, like that's a totally different game and a completely different design. So, certain games are easier or more difficult to do, but we also don't have to deal with like balancing or any of the things that really make multiplayer hard in most cases. So, yeah.
right. Yeah, like
Okay,
ownership
spoiler alert, you want to aim for the blue one.
The blue one?
I think so, I guess. The green
This
one
one.
and the red one feel further. Oh, orange one, sneaky orange one, my bad.
Where's the orange one?
Okay.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel the orange one will be better.
Lucas, what is the
We'll
right
see.
answer?
You know,
Okay.
Henning just changed these. So, right before we launched, he changed them. So I don't know which one. It used to be the orange one, but then we totally changed how the whole plays.
Ah, no, don't tell me that later at the last moment.
Just to
Okay.
throw off the alpha
Just to shake your confidence.
Yeah, exactly. I feel I trust my gut.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Woohoo! Let's
No,
see.
there's,
Nice.
I have to say, from a design standpoint, that's pretty good. I'll try a different one just to mix it up.
Good enough.
I'll try the green one here. One of the things that is so nice about doing this particular game, pretty much the same spot, is
Also
that
blue, just so we all have one.
Yeah, the blue will bounce maybe and go back.
No. You know what?
well, you have to
I'll
hit it in the
wait
blue
here.
pipe first.
Yeah. No, that was. I wanted to stay here. I like it here.
But what I was starting to say is like one of the nicest things about working on this game is that we get to do the larger world building stuff, but it's also like each hole is its own little puzzle, and you can change them up and you can adjust them, and sort of like you're not.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, Fisherman's Tale is a great example of one where like if you change something early on, it's going to have repercussions, and it's going to sort of like. It's going to change how people view stuff or how certain things later on play. So it's much more difficult to sort of like get that right and dial it in. But yeah, that's been so nice. But I'm also kind of curious, Thomas, when you're doing puzzle design, are you doing that because it's so three-dimensional? What's kind of your process for doing puzzle design for Cubism?
Right. So actually, after I built the first prototype, the first thing I built was a little. Oh, it's just me. Was a little level editor in VR, just because I knew doing puzzle design was going to be a very iterative thing, so being able to do that very quickly was very important. So I had like this very rudimentary level editor, and it would just sort of let me draw puzzles and solve them at the same time within the headset. And it would just save it to sort of the puzzle format I had. So that's for me the process is really just iterating over a puzzle many times, usually starting from the shape and then filling in the pieces, and then usually like leaving it aside for maybe a day or something so I can look at it with fresh eyes. And then it's just a lot of playtesting usually too, to just make sure I have the difficulty right. You know, that's that's something I found. Playtesting is just so essential. So
I could see that, especially because I know there were a couple of ones that I got, like they weren't any harder, but for some reason I had something that I was mentally doing the wrong way, and it would take me longer, but it didn't. Nothing ever sort of like got me stuck, because I've had that experience with other games where like, oh, there's this one thing and you can't grok it, and you end up spending like an hour just on this one puzzle. I never had that experience, so you could tell that there was a decent bit. Are there multiple ways of solving?
There are, you can definitely, if you can fill the grid, it's a valid solution. So some puzzles only have one solution, but some definitely have multiples. But it's definitely difficult for a game like this to design something that is both a challenge and is accessible to most people. And to me, like the answer there was less about like adding hints and more about giving people the flexibility of sort of skipping ahead. If you're stuck on something, you could just go to sort of the next puzzle. It's pretty generous in how quickly it unlocks everything. But Alexis, that's sort of something interesting about your game.
Sorry.
Because because you have you had to do a lot of playtesting for Fisherman's Tale and to get that sort of balance of difficulty of puzzles right, and making sure not everybody gets stuck.
Definitely, that's also something coming from the Portal School of Design. But playtesting is obviously key to balance any kind of game. So in the case of Fisherman's Tale, I had the luck to come from escape game background. I actually designed quite a few escape games in Paris, about 12, live rooms, escape rooms, maybe. I think it's escape rooms in English, and not escape games. Those were about 3 or 4 years of playtesting of sorts, because you design those rooms, and then when it opens, you see lots of people playing through those cameras, and that's a built-in playtesting session, I guess, because if you're familiar with those kind of games, the game master is here to assist the player, to watch them and assist them, make sure they don't destroy everything, obviously. So I was the game master for my rooms at first, obviously. That's awesome. And it's a very interesting place to see how players act with puzzles, how they think, how they handle stuff. And I definitely used a lot of this experience for Fisherman's Tale.
When you're doing the in-person rooms, how much are you able to sort of dial in stuff after the room is built? Like, are you actually changing it in real life to dial it in a little bit?
For physical space, physical game rooms, well, it's not so hard actually to make easier. Most of the time you want to make stuff easier, not harder, because game designers don't realize and they are inside their puzzles and they do too hard stuff. But making stuff easier is mostly about giving the same kind of hints that you have been given as a game master, but including them in some way in documents that players will find them around. So that's obviously basically the simplest way to adjust puzzles. And there are other ways more costly, but this way of doing it cover most of the case.
That's true. It's not like you're rebuilding the whole room. You're just adding a little bit more information to the bits that you're finding. Yeah.
It's too long. There's one room we have to destroy. It's it's really about giving other clues inside the game, and actually you increase search and exploration when you increase the clues that you give in general sense, because it's not only papers. It can be symbols and paintings and posters and any kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. Definitely, if you teach the player that they can find clues when looking around, they'll probably start looking around more.
Come back.
Oh no.
Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you before, like, where do you find the cutoff between having a difficult puzzle that is like a nice challenge for most people, and just adding a hint so people don't get stuck? Like, would you more quicker make a puzzle easier, or like, would you keep a difficult puzzle because you do want to have that?
Well, that's actually why we wanted to have this hint system inside of Fisherman's Tale, because second option is better, especially when you have a way to allow players to choose for themselves. Do they want to be assisted at some point with one first hint, then a second subtle hint, and finally maybe something close to the solution, but always given in a nice way, I guess.
Machinarium or Machinarium, depending on how you pronounce it, but they had the hint system in there that the hints were little puzzles in and of themselves, but they just did something. It was just so clever how they kind of created like a little arcade game. If you haven't played it, they kind of make this little arcade game that you have to beat in order to unlock the hint. But even then, the hint isn't
Machinarium, Machinarium, the scroll shooter to open the book. So nice, so cute.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Maybe we should talk around a cup of tea.
Oh yeah, let's go sit at the tea table. That'll be a much more photogenic sort of like spot.
Exactly.
I like this as like this could be like the post game. This is this can be the. I feel like this is like our set for the interview show or something now.
Oh, that's so nice! I didn't see. I love the attention to detail. Sorry, interrupting, but it's a small fairway, a small how do you say putter green putter.
That's amazing.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Cool.
Cheers. Bye. Thanks.